My name is Julia. I use she, her pronouns, and I live on Wabanaki land. A quick visual description is that I'm a Palestinian American with short brown hair, clear glasses, and a purple shirt. My background is the Palestinian flag with the Centering Palestine logo on it. We have that packet link in the chat. You're welcome to follow along there if it is easier than having to keep up with the chat. We have all the links in that packet there for you. It's also great to refer to later on in the week if there's something you wanted to go back to. This event is organized by many community volunteers, including Palestinian, Jewish, and ally contributors. I'm going to briefly go over our community agreements and then we do a short news update. Due to content warnings on the news update, we do pause Zoom admittance just for those few minutes while we do the news. So if you ever arrive a few minutes late and get stuck in the waiting room, that's probably why. Don't worry, we will let you in as soon as we're able. So I'm going to do the abbreviated version of our community agreements. You're welcome to look at the full agreements on our Zoom link community agreements doc. We're a COVID cautious group. This event is organized by COVID cautious folks, and we ask that people be respectful of that intersection. What that means is at these sessions, we don't discuss organizing or protesting in ways that don't take any important accessibility measures like COVID precautions. We are, of course, a pro-Palestine space. We support the liberation of Palestine. We are anti-Zionist. We do not tolerate anti-Semitism or Islamophobia of any kind. We are anti-Zionist, and anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Zionism is a settler colonial nationalist movement, and geopolitical powers like the US and Israeli governments have tried really hard to make Zionism and Jewishness synonymous. This is inaccurate and only serves to further harm Jewish and Palestinian communities. We center marginalized voices, particularly right now Palestinians. We use content warnings when appropriate. In terms of chat etiquette, everyone is always so polite. You're welcome to ask questions in the chat. We do ask that any conversations in the chat stay focused on the task on hand to make sure that we complete our really important action items. With that, I am going to put a content warning in place for this news segment. If you would like to turn your volume down, if you're watching this on YouTube, we put a little warning on the screen so you know when to listen, when not to. These sessions in general are not geared toward kids. So if you have little ones in earshot, I would recommend putting in headphones. With that, we are about to do our news update. That content warning is in place. So topic 1. Our update on casualties. Today is day 242, and the official death toll is 37,000. When I tell you the actual death toll is probably catastrophically higher than that, that is a really, really low estimate. The second link under topic 1, you'll see there in the chat, is actually an article that just lists some of the names of Palestinian children that have been killed since October 7th. This was shared with us by some volunteers, and it's really, really moving. It's estimated that one Palestinian child is killed every 15 minutes. So really sobering. Our next topic is updates on Rafah. So Rafah continues to see terrible violence. A CNN analysis confirms that US-made munitions are used in a number of the deadly strikes in the past couple weeks. On Friday, I know this is the big question that people have still on this same topic. Biden released a 3-stage ceasefire proposal. It is an extremely similar plan to the others that have been put forward by Hamas and by the Egyptian and Qatari negotiations since October. However, Netanyahu has consistently been the holdup. So Biden is using some of the strongest language we've seen so far, and Netanyahu is not yet falling in line. The most far-right members of his government are threatening to collapse the government if he agrees to it. So while the Biden administration is seemingly insisting that, everything's all right, all we need is for Hamas to agree, Netanyahu and the Israeli government don't seem to be following suit. So it's very chaotic right now. We're really not sure where that is going. The next topic I really wanted to bring up, topic 3, Palestinians in Gaza are obviously under really terrible genocidal circumstances. Palestinians in the West Bank and the 1948 territories are also facing increased oppression. This week, UN rights chief condemned the unprecedented violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, which continues to escalate. Also, Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship, so that means they live, quote unquote, legally in the 1948 territories, are also facing increased discrimination. So there was this video going around that just this week, a Palestinian business owner, Russia, was blindfolded and arrested for sharing support of Gaza on her social media. She is not the first. So there are reports that she has been released, but this kind of thing is extremely common and very traumatizing. So I just wanted to bring some attention to that as well, because we are seeing increased violence and just oppression for Palestinians, across the area. Topic 4, I'm going to touch on really briefly. So next week, we will do a deep dive into what is going on with the ICC and ICJ updates. For now, just a few little updates. Mexico has joined South Africa's ICJ case. That's great. There's been recent investigations published that reveal how intelligence agencies are trying to derail the war crimes prosecution, and that included threatening ICC prosecutors over the inquiry. So not okay. We will do a deep dive into the ICC and ICJ topics next week. Topic 5, Sudan updates. Yesterday marked the anniversary of the Khartoum massacre, where at least 120 pro-democracy protesters were killed. That was in 2019. While fighting between Sudan's military and the RSF is kind of being billed as a civil war, civilians have no choice in the matter and are facing really catastrophic levels of starvation as the fighting continues. You can check out the links to learn more. We have an action item tonight specifically to support Sudan because of how dire the starvation and the crisis is right now. Next, in the DRC, this past week, at least 12 were killed in bomb attacks on displacement camps. The Congolese government is blaming the Rwandan army and M23 for targeting displaced folks. The DRC has also just announced its new government after 5 months of delay. So right now, not only does the international community need to stand up against human rights abuses in the DRC, but as consumers, we also have to take responsibility and boycott products that use what amounts to slave labor in the DRC. Some international updates. Mexico is electing its first female president in a historic vote. France banned Israeli companies from participating in their arms and defense exhibition that's coming up. And very importantly, the EU has released a statement condemning any attempt to label UNRWA as a terrorist organization. They write, "We urge the Israeli authorities to allow UNRWA to continue carrying out its crucial work in line with its mandate." The very last thing I have listed is a bonus article. I've been doing this the past couple weeks. If you want a deep dive, if you like to read, this is a PDF from Palestine Legal called "Reverberations of October 7th, Mobilization Against Genocide Undeterred by Peak Anti-Palestinian Repression." So Pal Legal does amazing work, and they put together a really extensive look into how, despite this huge rise in anti-Palestinian repression, the whole movement continues to really build and flourish. So I definitely recommend reading that if it interests you. We have many contributors who help me collect all this news information, so thank you. With that, our content warning is lifted. For our action section tonight, you are welcome to do any or all of the action items. We never want to make you do something you don't want to do, so it's totally up to you. So it is Pride Month. Happy Pride. I hope you're in a safe and welcoming place. If you're not, we are your friends and family now. We love and support you. This was a very requested topic, and of course, really close to our hearts that we wanted to talk about. I wanted to start with this quote. I promise I didn't go overboard with the rainbow glitter, but I wanted a little bit. So this is a beautiful quote from Subo, who is a queer Palestinian DJ. So he says, "What do any of you know of my Palestine, of the late night queer parties in Ramallah, of raves held in biblically aged buildings, of lesbians in hijabs, of gay men in hoop earrings, of trans Palestinians dancing joyfully with abandon?" This is an intro that was very, very well written from USCPR. They're wonderful. So I just wanted to capture this intro to kind of set us up for our presentation tonight. So I'm just going to read what's on the screen. This is from the No Pride in Apartheid toolkit that you can look at and use yourself. As Palestinians of all gender and sexual identities are resisting Israel's ongoing genocide, and trans people around the world are under attack from right-wing institutions and politicians, we must join together to build safety and justice for all. From the US to Palestine, queer and trans people have resisted oppression for decades. In Palestine, queer and trans Palestinians face parallel struggles against apartheid, Israel's violent oppression, and against restrictive norms within their own society, the product of past British and ongoing Israeli colonialism. In the US, queer liberation has also meant fighting racism, patriarchy, and police violence directed at those on the margins, from the 1960s Compton cafeteria riot and Stonewall uprising to supporting Black trans sex workers and trans youth seeking affirming care today. Really good encapsulation there. I did want to talk about the queer Palestinian community. We'll get into pinkwashing in the next couple slides, which you may have heard that term before, you may not, that's okay. We don't really talk about the queer Palestinian community. We just kind of have these propaganda talking points. So we're going to kind of dispel some of those myths. I really like this first quote. In the packet and on the slides, you can link to full articles. You can do a deep dive read. I totally recommend for Pride Month if that's something that interests you. But this first quote says, "The agency of queer Palestinian people, whether in the homeland or the diaspora, is central to the Palestinian struggle and takes on unique aspects as queer Palestinian people navigate the complex layers of oppression." So this Pride Month, we're busting some myths about the queer Palestinian community. First one being that Israel does nothing to protect queer Palestinians. Again, we'll get into pinkwashing in a second, but there's this very pervasive myth that Israel as a so-called state is super affirming and welcoming, and when you get into the actual facts, that's not so true, and they certainly don't do anything to protect Palestinians, regardless of their identity. The next point that I really wanted to talk back to, all Palestinians aren't homophobic or transphobic. I think a good context reality check is, are all Americans? Of course not. Of course, we're not all homophobic or transphobic. If you look at some of our policies, oh my God, it's horrible, right? The amount of transphobic legislation going on right now. But sometimes we need that reality check that let's not lean into racism and Islamophobia by assuming that because someone is Palestinian, because they're Arab, because they're Muslim, that automatically means that they're homophobic or transphobic, right? That's a myth that we need to bust, is not true. Similarly, in Palestine, there are more conservative and more liberal Muslims, just like there are more conservative and more liberal Palestinian Christians, as well as plenty of non-religious folks across the political spectrum in Palestine. And that's a little piece of context and nuance that we sometimes forget. So just like in the West or wherever country you're on, there's going to be a spectrum of opinions and religions. So just that gentle reminder not to tie someone's religion with an automatic opinion. This last point is a little bit more, I would say maybe not Palestine 101, we're going to do Palestine 102. So especially for Pride Month and for the queer community. Coming out or demanding specific visibility doesn't always translate across culture and when you're dealing with very complex oppression. So what I encourage you is, as we're learning about the queer Palestinian community, to just keep an open mind about how it might look different, because there is a very big difference in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of the oppressions and the genocide they're facing right now. I really recommend that last line there that says "Queer Solidarity with Palestine" is a Google Doc that has a fantastic list of articles, books, videos, and more. They have nice little chunks that are not too overwhelming, but if you like videos or if you're really into articles or books, whatever your jam is, that's a super cool resource to dig into more. This is another really great quote that I think encapsulates that kind of 102 that we're leaning into, that little bit more deeper understanding. So Adam here writes, "It is important to emphasize that I am in no way trying to present another flattened or one-dimensional image of queer life in Palestine. Many of us do face violence that prevent us from living and exploring our queerness with dignity and safety. Yet, as my own experience illustrates, our experiences are diverse and multiple, the same as they are everywhere." I think that's kind of the takeaway thesis I would love for us to have today. There is a beautiful and strong queer community in Palestine, whether that's in Palestine or the diaspora, and it is going to look different based on individuals' lives and the oppressions that they're dealing with. Pinkwashing. So you may have heard this term, you may have seen some infographics going around. It's good to return to. So pinkwashing is the attempt to gloss over Israel's ongoing settler colonization in Palestine by redirecting attention to Israel's supposedly stellar gay rights record in comparison with the supposedly dismal LGBTQIA plus Palestinian experiences. So why does this pinkwashing, as it's been called, exist? This overfixation on the supposed lack of Palestinian queer visibility steers attention from Israel's campaign against all Palestinians, workers, activists, students, feminists, queers, and otherwise. Israel and its allies dangerously decontextualize the violence queers suffer from its historical colonial roots and dissociate it from the impacts of current settler colonial violence. I think this goes back to from way before October 7th, from October 7th onward, we see these talking points in one too many comment sections, right, where it's immediately brought up, oh, well, you wouldn't be safe as a queer person in Palestine. And not only is that a gross mischaracterization, not true to the facts, but it also disregards the very current issue of no one is safe in Palestine right now because there's a genocide. So one more note here on pinkwashing. So what pinkwashing needs to work is Orientalism / Islamophobia and entitlement. So the reality that pinkwashing is hiding, this is a quote, "We queer Palestinians have a vibrant, diverse liberation movement that is part of the Palestinian anti-colonial movement. For decades, we have been tirelessly working on carving up and maintaining a space for Palestinian queer life amongst our communities and not despite them. We are everywhere in schools, streets, prisons, hospitals, and at the forefront of every confrontation in every corner of Palestine from the river to the sea. What we are working towards is a Palestine liberated from colonialism, patriarchy, and capitalist exploitation." Again, a really beautiful quote that sums up, not to say that there are no challenges, not to say that it's perfect, but to add that color to the issue where we see that there is a beautiful community that is fighting for their rights, and that they are doing this under the umbrella of oppression, colonization, and right now, genocide. I think I'm handing it to you, Kevin.
My name is Kevin. I use he or they pronouns. I'm calling from Muskogee land. And a quick visual description of me: I have glasses, dark brown hair, and I'm white, Ashkenazi, and mixed, mostly British Isles. So we do just want to address pre-colonial LGBTQIA plus history in Palestine. There is a lack of materials in English about pre-colonial gender identities among Palestinians. There's also a lack of materials on intersex Palestinians and a lack of material on female-assigned Palestinians' sexual relationships with other female-assigned Palestinians. There is some material about same-sex behavior between men in Palestine when Britain basically, quote unquote, took Palestine as a colony. And what this boils down to is the British were scandalized by what they perceived as the prevalence of, quote unquote, sodomy among the natives in Palestine and worked to eradicate it through criminal legislation. The criminalization of consensual sexual relations between adult men was a novelty introduced to Palestine by the British. The Ottoman Penal Code, OPC, that existed at the time of the British occupation in 1918 did not contain such a ban. The British rulers of Palestine expressly aimed to obliterate sodomy, which they perceived as a prevalent depravity among the local population. We could unpack that a lot more, and there's a link in the session packet to that specific quote, which actually comes from a peer-reviewed article. And also, just another note, it's great to have historical records. And at the same time, we also have to remember that written text, quote unquote, proof is often prioritized by Western cultures, and it disadvantages cultures that rely on oral tradition or where so many communities have been destroyed. And we also just want to pay a bit of attention here to attacks on cultural institutions and intersectionality. We want to keep in mind that attacks on queer Palestinians are happening within a broader context of attacks on Palestinians and Palestinian cultural institutions. Qatar, who we've actually referenced quite a bit already, reported in April that 177 journalistic premises have been destroyed or damaged. Additionally, 443 schools have been destroyed, 647 mosques have been destroyed, 3 churches have been destroyed, and 200 archaeological sites have been destroyed. And this is why Queers in Palestine reviews colonial and imperialist tactics that seek to alienate us from our society and alienate our society from us on the basis of our queerness. We are fighting interconnected systems of oppression, including patriarchy and capitalism, and our dreams of autonomy, community, and liberation are inherently tied to our desire for self-determination. So let's lift up some queer Palestinians that you should know about. There's Rauda Marcos, a poet and activist. She actually created Aswat in 2003. This is the first group that really focuses on Palestinian lesbians. There's Bashar Murad, who's a singer-songwriter, whose mission is to bring Palestine into the mainstream with pop music. And there's Randa Jaher, who's an author. She disrupted a prominent literary event in February to read the names of writers killed by Israel since October 7th. So there's some resources on how to support queer Palestinians during Pride Month. There are some actions you can take. The first two look very similar. One is Queers in Palestine on Instagram. The other is Queers for Palestine on Instagram. Very similar, but different resources. And we can also look up OSWAT, which is an organization led by queer Palestinian women and also actually trans Palestinians. And there are some organizations as well to lift up that support queer Palestinians and Arabs. The Dyke Project, the Feminist Library, Revolutionary Socialism in the 21st Century, and the Muslim Alliance for Sexual and Gender Diversity. So those are all resources that you can check out. And the next slide has farther reading and resources. There's a call for the queer community to support Palestine. I believe this is the last slide here. There's also an essay on Palestine as a queer issue. There are lots of pink washing resources. Queering the Map has a lot of resources as well. I believe they also go pretty in depth on pink washing. There's a spotlight on Palestinian LGBTQ plus artists. There's a lot on that page, actually, lots of artists. This last piece is a thought piece. It's Queer Palestine and the Empire Critique. And it addresses a critique that has been applied to Palestine, that's been applied actually outside of many non-Western contexts, which is basically a critique that says that identity labels of gay, lesbian, homosexual, etc., come from a Western point of view. And this critique can be a little bit hard to understand and unpack. But I think a way that you can think about this critique is that there's a difference between identity, which can be culturally rooted, and behavior. So we can see certain behaviors occurring across many different cultures, but then how those behaviors are understood and the identity, connotations that go along with them can vary across cultures. And so that piece, basically looks at that and talks about this in the context of Palestine and in the context of increasingly transnational human society. Last little awesome quotation to leave you with here. Revolutionary optimism is a wajib. It is our duty to remain optimistic and commit to the belief and certainty that Palestine will be liberated. That's from National SJP. Next week, we're going to be focusing on the ICC and the ICJ ruling. Our closing song is by Amira Jazeera, You're Still Thinking About Me. We also have a topics poll if you would like to provide more feedback on future topics, as well as our usual feedback poll as well. Thank you so much, everybody.